Well, welcome everyone to another workshop here at the Test Camp. This is Pathways to Teaching in the USA. Now, you folks joining us live online, you're welcome to contribute your comments anytime, and we'll try to get to as many as possible here in the discussion periods. And if you join us directly through the Test Camp YouTube channel, welcome to YouTube. Of course, you can pause or reset or replay that video anytime. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Now, note that this is the workshop designed to discuss the pathways. The reason we include pathways in the title is because there are several different ways, pathways to becoming certified as a teacher. The term teaching makes a distinction between classroom teachers and other school personnel like administrators or counselors. The pathway to certification is very different for those folks. Now, United States is used here, or USA, because we get questions from people all around the world about teaching here in the United States of America. And many of these people are coming because they're considering teaching in public schools or becoming public school teachers. And specifically, they want to know the rules related to certain states. And you might already know those rules can be very different. Now, a pathway to teaching, especially for those working through certification requirements, is substitute teaching. Substitutes generally earn about 1/3 of the pay of certified teachers and are not likely to receive benefits like insurance. The requirements for becoming a substitute vary widely and are generally set by individual schools' districts. All right, that's a little bit different from certification, which is done by the states. Another pathway to professional teaching is working as a paraprofessional. In some parts of the country, this term is used as paraeducator. These teachers are generally assigned to more permanent positions than substitutes. They can make a slightly higher rate of pay, and sometimes they get benefits, sometimes not. In many cases, you'll find that the districts use paraprofessionals to assist teachers in exceptional education classes, and therefore training is usually required or at least preferred. For anyone considering these two pathways, this company, Steady, is the industry leader in teacher training. Now, here's a quick look at the front page of their site. As you can see, they guarantee that you'll not only meet your district's hiring requirements for substitute teaching, they also guarantee that you'll be offered a job. Now, Steady also has an online training package for paraeducators. Again, check with your school district. If you're considering this pathway, you're likely required to have expertise you can learn from this training package. You might also have to pass the paraprofessional exam, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Let's get back to the pathways for certified teachers. So for the purpose of this workshop, certification can be also thought of as licensure. Now, there's much debate about the distinction between those two terms. Some say that the role of the government is to give a license to those who are deemed worthy or certified by their profession. But despite the debate, both terms, certification and licensure, might be used here today during the workshop. The term certification presents to the public the perception of higher quality. For example, is the person working on your car a certified mechanic? What do you think that means if they're a certified mechanic? Does that give you more confidence in their work being done? Now, many companies, including public schools, private schools, and charter schools, are now requiring government certification for employees, both those being recruited and teachers who are currently employed. Now, you might know folks that are required to go back and get certified, even though they've been successfully teaching in their career for many years. As mentioned a moment ago, certification also implies that there is a profession. All right, so what does the term profession mean to you? How does it compare to the term, say, amateur or novice? Let's take a couple minutes there to meet together with your neighbor here at the tables and talk this through. Maybe it'd be helpful if you thought about certain careers, like are some careers considered professions and others not? What's the difference there? So discuss this among yourselves for the next few minutes there at the tables, the concept of professional versus amateur or novice. Okay? We'll be back as a whole group and discuss this in just a couple minutes. Hey, for those of you joining us today live online, feel free to send in your ideas. We're going to include them here in the discussion. And if you're joining us by watching the recording, this would be a great time to go ahead and give that a pause and think this through. What's the difference between being amateur and novice versus being a professional? We'll be here when you return. All right, so we're back here. We shared a lot of ideas about what makes a profession unique, and many of you watching the recording, you might have looked up the terms. What does it mean to be an amateur or a novice? Well, the origins of the word amateur really include to love something. However, more recently, and probably in circles like the Olympics or college athletics in the United States, for example, the term is most closely related to non-professional. So you engage in a pursuit without getting paid, but of course that's getting changed. Now you likely found that novice simply means that's a beginner, someone with limited experience. Can we say that a professional is someone who does get paid and who does have experience? If so, then what's the distinction between a professional and a non-professional career? Well, first it begins with a unified set of standards. Right. Our profession can be thought of as a disciplined group that defines its own standards and then monitors the conduct of both those entering and participating in the profession. I'll give that a thought for a moment. The profession defines the standards and monitors those that are in the group. Now, some of the careers that you discussed here at the table were medicine and law. I heard that over here. Do they define the standards and monitor those in the profession? Sure they do. You can lose your license or your certification if you fail to meet the standards or uphold the standards. How about public safety careers that you discussed, like police and fire? Who sets the standards? Can you lose your license? Right. How about public service like teaching and nursing? Because these are public careers like police and fire, the government is too heavy-handed for some people. They just don't feel it's the government's point. They think the profession should be defining it, not the government coming in. However, in all cases, these professions have systems that define the standards for those entering and monitors the conduct of those who are participating. So the question is then why? That's right, members represent the profession, right? So there's the integrity of the profession. In each profession, the members protect the idea that they have a certain expertise, and this expertise comes from a widely ranged, recognized body of learning that is derived from research, and with education and training at a very high level. So there's your components of a profession or a professional expertise. Professionals are also prepared to apply their expertise in the interest of others. Let's go back to your examples. Medicine, law, police, fire, teacher, nurses. Can you see that these might be considered professions and why others might not? All right, so how does the profession determine the expertise of those who wish to enter and who want to be certified? Well, another way besides the expertise then is exams. Medicine, law, police, fire, teachers, nurses. Okay? These are all professional license exams that are required to enter the profession. And that's what many of you had said you're facing. Is that right? Yeah. Another requirement you mentioned earlier was experience. That's the opposite of being a novice. You actually have some bona fide experience. So let's take a closer look at all three components, beginning with expertise. How do we define this? First, we say that the candidate would need to learn a certain research-based body of knowledge. Second, a teacher candidate would have to prove, at least to some professional level, that they have the skills. Probably they show this on the job through an internship. Now, how many would argue that the dispositions or the attitudes, the way the person goes about their business, is how you can spot a professional? Okay, well, more on that later. So what are the industry standards for teachers in your state? Well, in most states, these are referred to as the competencies. We said earlier that competencies are measured by exams. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, the guards of the profession want to know that the candidate can apply their expertise, so they require that experience. All right, so you see how that all works there, these three together. Teacher candidates might demonstrate competencies through an apprenticeship, like we said, and this is on-the-job training. We'll discuss this in a few minutes. For those that are in a traditional teaching and education program, this is called an internship experience. It's built right into the program. But in either case, the experience must be state approved, must be based on the competencies, and then certified by the government, the state. Again, the experience is likely to be on-the-job training and in a public school, and for the period of at least 1 year. All right? We'll get into more specifics about experience in just a few minutes. Let's review. Expertise is gained through an education program. Exams like the education program are based on competencies. And what do we know about experience? 1 full year. That's right. All right, so let's move on to the expertise issue for a moment. Do you remember how expertise or education is measured? Through knowledge, skills, and dispositions. And these are defined by the profession. So let's look into the traditional pathway. What do you think this might be? Many of you here today, what are you doing? Yes, you're going to school. Okay, not just any school, but one that is accredited. So faculty must prove every few years that their programs, their classes, their activities, all their measures are based on the government standards, the competencies. And in some case, they must also prove that their candidates are successful as first-year professionals. One traditional pathway is to go to college for the main purpose of gaining certification to teach in a government public school. Okay? This is the pathway to major in education. The major amount of your time in your junior and senior years will be focused on gaining the knowledge, skills, and dispositions for teaching. Now, who here are currently, you're in an undergraduate degree program? Can I see? Yeah, okay. What's your program? Go ahead. Elementary ed. Anybody here that's not in a degree program that's not elementary ed? What's your program? Okay, secondary mathematics. Good. That's a good example. Now you're going to find a job because they need those. All right, so maybe you already have an undergraduate degree, maybe in a non-education major, and you decide to go back to college. So what then you do is you apply for and you get approved to join a graduate school program. Again, for the main purpose of learning the competencies and preparing your exams. In this case, you work towards a higher education degree, such as a master's, MAT they call it, and Masters of Arts in Teaching. And we'll do more specifics on these in just a moment too. And don't be surprised if you find that the majority of teachers in some of the public schools, maybe where you're already working or interning now, have earned their certificate by taking what's called an alternative pathways to teaching. That is, their major focus in college was not teaching. Maybe they're considering teaching now as a second career, or whatever the circumstances, theirs is an alternative pathway. Anybody here today that's in that situation? Oh, okay, quite a few. What was your major in college as an undergraduate? Psychology, okay. And what grade level most interests you? Elementary, middle, secondary? Okay, middle grades. Which subject area? Okay, science. Well, that too, along with math, is one of the more critical needs areas. This term, or one like it, is used by some states for the first alternative pathway that we're going to discuss here today. Okay, you might have heard that this pathway is also known as alternative certification, but be careful about this term because it does have other meanings in some of the states. You might think of this as homeschooling or school districts. And here's why these exist. Some states are faced each year with a teacher shortage. Many states are. Traditional programs might graduate only about a half of the certified teachers needed. So some school districts ask for permission to train their own teachers. Some of them did, not all. The state then approved these district programs by making sure that the candidates learned what? Yeah, that's right, the competencies. So the district might conduct a series of workshops, seminars, and classes, or partner with a local college that helps teach the program. Again, not every district applied for or maintains an alternative cert or an alt-cert program. And to participate in an alt-cert program, you must first have a promise of employment, or you have to be working there. In other words, you must first be hired by the district. You get that, right? The district isn't offering this program to the general public or even to a candidate who's has an application on file. Notice also that these are not college courses. So even though competencies are being earned, college credit is not. Many school districts would say these programs are working. Now they are providing candidates for school principals to interview. Here's what has to happen for that to work. The goal for the candidate is to get hired on a temporary certificate. In some states, the certificate will be honored for up to 3 years. Yeah, go ahead. Why temporary? Well, this is an alternative pathway, and that allows the candidate to complete certain requirements while they're working as a teacher, right? Because they didn't get them in school. This arrangement allows also for the school districts to have an opportunity to monitor the candidate's competency. All right, so to be able for the candidate must first apply to the state for certification. The application includes transcripts, record of experience, and so on. Every school district has designated professionals to assist with the application process. Working through these people, these are the professionals at the district, will likely be a better experience than working directly with the state. There are professionals at every district. That's who we want to work with. Okay. The reply from the state, which is turned in, generally arrives back in a few weeks, and it lets the district know if the candidate is eligible to be hired for a certain subject. Okay, see that? That's called a statement of eligibility in most states. Okay, again, we recommend that you work with your school district before sending your application. If the statement does allow the district to hire, then interviews are conducted, and the candidate might then be hired, again, on a certificate that is temporary. Right? Does everyone understand the order? Apply, get hired, then you get the certificate. An advantage of the homegrown system is that the districts that have put out this effort are also likely to mentor the first-year teacher. They put all that work in. They want to make sure that the teacher's going to stay. And although it's a rigorous year, the candidate is concurrently earning the required experience. All right, so everybody sees how that works. More specific information for your state can be found on this site. Very reliable. Simply choose your state for all the details. Okay? You'll find a pathway to the State Department of Education area that explains all the alternative programs. And therefore, we strongly warn against taking certification advice from any other source. So don't listen to friends and relatives, even teachers and professors. They're trying to be helpful, but they don't keep up with like the professionals at the district. And particularly don't go to websites or webinars or pay. People are paying for webinars. You don't need to do that. It's all free information, all given through the school district. Okay? All right, so talk among yourselves for a few minutes. Let's see if we've got this one down here. What do you think you now know about alternative certification? What questions you might have? And we'll come back and talk about it in just a moment as a full group. Okay, again, for you folks joining us today live online, send in your thoughts and questions, and we'll include them here in the discussion. And if you're joining us by watching the video, this might be a good time to go ahead and pause, and we'll be here when you come back. Okay, so we're back. Good question up here. Can you transfer an alternative certificate from state to state? As you might imagine, the likely answer to that is no. However, you are likely to transfer some of the credit within your state. But again, check with the professionals there at the school district. Another question down here. When are the exams taken? All right, well, we're going to get to that in a moment. We're going to do the expertise first, and you're good question. We're going to get to the exams. One more. I'll repeat that for those listening in. Can you try to join an alt-cert program without the promise of a job? I have not heard of that happening. However, again, where do you get that advice from? Yes, from the school districts. They do a terrific job of providing workshops. They explain all these procedures. I've just kind of bundled it in here to this information session for us today. All right, so here's the second of the three main alternative pathways, and that is called an Educator Preparation Institute, or what's often referred to as an EPIs. and thousands of teacher candidates must be qualified annually to keep up with the demand for new teachers. And the traditional pathways, they only, again, educate about 1/2 of the candidates needed in many of the states. And many of those don't immediately enter the public school workforce. Right? So we've learned that through AltCert, certain school districts are homeschooling their candidates. Remember, that's AltCert. That's still not enough to fill the demand, so where do the others come from? Well, it might not be a surprise to you that many of the state and the community colleges are getting this EPI business. The EPI programs are offered only by some of the colleges, so again, you'll want to check and make sure that there's a program that's near you. Maybe check on that website. In the EPI programs, candidates do not earn college credit, even though they're taking college courses. It's not for college credit. However, these programs are better suited for many potential teacher candidates. And I'll show you why. Yes, that's exactly right. You've got it. Are you in that? You're in one? Yes, it's time. EPIs provide an opportunity for those with life commitments like families and jobs. A candidate can't suspend their life to go back to school full time, and the courses are often taught in the evenings and weekends online. And in some EPI programs, candidates can complete an entire program in about 1 calendar year. And the cost versus full-time undergraduate school can be about a half or even less, particularly when it's compared to a private school or going back to graduate school. Now, one of the most respected EPI programs, which is fully online, and give you at least an idea of how this works, is called Teachers of Tomorrow. So check their site to see if they have a program offered in your state. Yeah, we just put those spaces. Yeah, we put those spaces so it's easier to read up here. So Teachers of Tomorrow, all no spaces.org. Good question. Okay, an important feature of their program is that there, again, is a mentor assigned to each candidate in these EPIs. All right, so again, talk among yourselves about EPIs. What do you think you know about Education Preparation Institutes? Talk among yourselves there, and we'll come back in just a few moments and compare all the ideas. All right, for you folks online, again, we'll be back in just a couple minutes after I go around and hear what's being discussed. If you're watching this through the recording, now might be a good time to pause that, jot down some of the things you think you know about EPIs, and you can compare when we come back. Okay, let's go a couple of questions here. I'll repeat for the people listening to the recording. Can you gain experience through an EPI? Well, we strongly suggest that you speak in person with an advisor at the college, a state college advisor, and get confirmations about all aspects of their programs. My understanding is that many do, but that's, again, you don't get the information from me. You get it straight from the advisor at the college. Everything offered in the program will also be in writing. Okay, another question? Yes, good point. We do not want to confuse an EPI with a college program. They're both being offered through the college, but these are two separate programs. Very good. All right, we'll talk about that more in the next section of the workshop. Another set of training programs available to teacher candidates comes under this umbrella title, sometimes called an ITPP. It's a term that basically means that you are going to college. So as an undergraduate, a candidate might be in an ITPP as a traditional student. And as we talked about earlier, they would spend a major part of their third and their fourth year taking courses in the college. How many people are doing that here? Okay, quite a few. So you went to school to learn to be a teacher. Included in the program would be the experience or the internship. That's built right into it. However, at some colleges, there's an option to major in one subject, and then you package some electives into a certificate or a minor in education. So that's 3 to 5, maybe 6 classes. The education college will allow students outside of their college to participate in the foundations courses that have the embedded competencies. So again, in some cases, 3 to 5, maybe 6 classes. That's called a certificate. It's not a teaching certificate. It just means a small group of courses within a certain concentration. All right. 5 or 6 courses, then it's called a minor. And again, the competencies are earned, but you're not earning the experience, you're just getting the coursework. So you can imagine how this gives a candidate a head start on an application. If they pass certain exams, they might qualify to be hired, and then they earn their experience on the job in that first year. Kind of see how that works? Here's another option, graduate school. Say you've already have that degree in psychology, like you said over there. This can somewhat mirror the undergraduate plan. So the options include going back to school to complete the full program, right? You just get the competencies that you need, okay? Have you heard of this term? It's called post-baccalaureate programs. They might allow a candidate to just take the 1 or 2 or 3 courses they need, and they don't even have to apply to be in the graduate program. But you can imagine the advantages, especially for candidates who don't want to take the graduate entrance exam. They don't want to pursue the whole graduate degree, at least not for now. So graduate certificate programs are similar to the undergraduate programs, the certificates and minors. And the attractions of these is they have the competencies embedded. So you don't have to go back to the district and get them. You're not getting them from an EPI. You're basically getting them from the colleges. And the 5 or 6 courses that you might take, they could be applied to a master's degree, a higher ed degree, because in most cases this degree is called the MAT, or the Masters of Arts in Teaching. All right, so again, here's a really good place to go to learn a little bit more about that, and if that's allowed in your state, because they provide the pathways to the State Department of Education, which explains this. But let's go ahead now and talk among yourselves about these programs for a couple of moments. This is called the Initial Teacher Preparation Programs, either at the undergraduate or the graduate level. What have you heard? What have you experienced? Help each other out here at the tables, and we'll discuss it as a group when we come back. Okay, again, for those of you that are listening live here today, if you'll include any of your questions, we'll include them in the discussion up here, or any of your thoughts actually. And if you're watching the video, perfect time to go ahead and give that a pause, and now you can compare all the programs that we've talked about, the Alt-Cert, the EPI, and this ITPP, going back to college. All right, we'll be here when you return. All right, we're back. Good question over here. Advisement in this case, as with the EPIs, comes not from the school district or a program coordinator anyway. It comes from the school's academic advisors, the college, okay? The candidate then takes that information to the program coordinator to confirm it's accurate in the district. All right, so you get your advisement from the school that you took these classes, then you go to the district and make sure that it's correct, that it matches up. Great question there. Okay, another question way back here. I'll repeat it for those listening in. The graduate admission test, that's generally the GRE, the graduate record exam. This exam is generally not required for a post-bac or a certificate program, like if you're only taking those 2 or 3 or 4 classes. Right. Again, it depends on the school. One more question and we'll move on. Yes, you're correct. You are not earning experience unless the internship is built into the program. A substitute and paraprofessional experience might demonstrate the competencies, but is very likely not going to give credit. Can you think about why that is? Even though you did it, you taught for a year, you've been substituting for a year, why don't no one watched you? You were not formally monitored for the competencies at that point. Right, but again, this differs from district to district, but that's pretty unlikely that you're going to get experience credit for being a substitute or even a paraprofessional. All right, so let's go ahead and review the 3 main types of programs, right, that can provide the expertise. The professional development certification programs offered at school districts are called EPIs at some state colleges. So let me get that right. At the top was the professional development that's offered at the schools. The EPIs are offered at the colleges, and the ITPPs also at the colleges or universities. These are the ones where you actually get a degree. And you may have heard of PTO. That's another, talked about in some of the schools, a professional training option. But you learn that from the school. Okay, and again, we've talked about a reliable source that takes you straight to the website for the state. All right, that concludes the discussion about expertise. Let's get on to the exams. That's what many of you are here to ask about. Teaching professions generally require up to three exams. The first one's related to the core knowledge and skills. And as you might imagine, the components of these tests are mathematics, computation, reading and writing, communication. Okay? This test might have a different name in your state, so again, check online. The second of the three, go ahead, right over here. Yes, in Florida, this is called the general knowledge test, right? The second of the three exams is designed to test your knowledge about a certain subject area. Each state views subject areas in unique ways. In some states, for example, there are tests related specifically to certain grade levels, like early childhood or middle grades, right? The third exam shows the candidate's knowledge of learning and teaching. And this exam is sometimes referred to as the professional exam. Yes, in Florida, professional education test, right? It is the most subjective of the three because it attempts to measure both knowledge and your skills and your dispositions or your attitudes about teaching, and there's an assumption by each state what best practices are. All right, so let's begin with a discussion of the core knowledge and skills test. Candidates attempting admission into a traditional undergraduate program can expect to be required to pass this test before they're accepted into their college program. Teachers working on a professional development plan or on a temporary contract usually have to produce a passing score on this test by the end of their first year. Sometimes longer. It, again, depends on the state. So yes, there are many working teachers who have not yet passed this test. How about that? Now, most school districts who are granted permission to provide this exception encourage these teachers to pass this test as early as possible, since they want to make hiring plans for the following year. So usually by April or so. Okay. Then we move on to this. You're right. In Florida, that's called the general knowledge test. Okay. Then there's the subject area exams. Okay. And then there is the learning and teaching exams. Now, on the subject area exams, most test subjects are about content knowledge. However, they might also include teaching strategies and assessment in that subject area. In other words, how to learn to read or how to teach math, that sort of thing. That's not true for the general knowledge or core tests. There are no questions about teaching on those. Now, in Florida, that learning and teaching test, like we said, is called the professional education test. And what's interesting about the Florida exam, which is different from most of the other states, is that passing this exam means you're good kindergarten through 12th grade, where in many of the other states, they have a unique test for elementary or middle or high school or secondary. All right, see how that works? All right, so before we discuss all these exams here in learning and teaching, talk among yourselves about the first two types of exams. Do you kind of understand what those are there? The core and the subject area, and then we'll get a little more into the other ones when we come back as a group. Okay, again, for those of you listening in, if you have any questions or ideas or comments, go ahead and include them up here, and we're going to talk about them during our discussion period here today. And if you're watching the recording, now would be a good time to pause and make sure that you know which tests are required in your state. We'll be here when you return. Okay, first question back here. About taking an entire test in one day. Again, depends on the state, but some exams can be thought of as individual tests, and they can have up to 4 individual tests. In some cases, all sections, sometimes called subtests, do not have to be taken on the same day. But we suggest that you visit the testing center. We have workshops for all this at the test camp, and we always suggest that you visit the testing center for more information. So this is not done by the schools, districts. This is not done by the colleges. This is done by the testing center, the people who own the test that work with the state. Good question. Which subject area tests do you take and when? Well, candidates in a traditional program are required to pass the test related to their program. So, for example, elementary education majors are required to pass the elementary education or K through 6 subject area exam. Candidates hired on a temporary contract, they're considered in field if their subject area test matches what their teaching assignment. So this is what employers are looking for, the match. You take the test for what it is you're going to teach. So who would you talk to about that? That's right, the professional at the school district. Okay, another question over here. I'll repeat it for those listening in. More than one subject area. Yes, you can have more than one subject area on your certificate. This gives the school district and principals flexibility in hiring and placement. For those seeking employment, especially in the low demand areas where there's few if any openings, a second subject area will enable you to be hired and teach in another field or out of field. As long as you have that on your license, it's considered in field. All right, even if it's not your first choice, at least you're hired. And then you could be on the lookout for another opportunity in your preferred field. There's a couple more questions here. Go ahead. Taking more than one subject area in a year. Okay, well, there's no limit to the number of subject area exams in most states that I know of. But remember, most exams cost at least $150 or $200 or more. That's just for the first attempt. So if you want to see me after this session, I'll explain this a little more in detail for you. Okay, or you can watch the test camp workshops too. All right. All right, like I mentioned earlier, there's many as 40 unique subject area tests too. All right, one more question right over here, and then we'll move on. Go ahead. When to take the subject area test? Well, in most traditional programs, first. I mean, this is one of the things you have to do before you're going to get hired. So especially in alternative programs, they would want this test before they even wanted the professional or the general knowledge or core tests. Now there's some exceptions, so again, you have to go to your school district, make sure they'll tell you what's correct. All right, so let's go on to this third test. We talked about the core there a little bit, the subject area. Let's go on to this next one, professional learning and teaching test. Each of the multiple choice test items in these are based on competencies, which are explained in detail when you come to the test camp workshop about this. However, the teacher candidate will need a good understanding of what experts deem important. It's subjective. What is best practice according to your state? What needs to be exhibited by teaching professionals? So again, this exam is the most subjective of the three. Why? Well, because to understand the intent of the test items is just as important as knowing the correct answers. But also, there's a current educational culture or philosophy that's used to determine these best practices. So just come to the workshops, you'll feel a lot better about it. If you can do that, you'll expect to pass on the first attempt, no problem. All right, so let's review. First, we discussed the issues related to expertise, the competencies learned that are required to qualify for the profession. Then we took an inside look into certification exams. We determined how they're different and how they affect test preparation for each one. And finally, you see how most states view experience as a qualification for certification. The first concept related to experience is that it needs to be no less than 1 academic year. Remember the Alt-Cert programs, this experience is earned while employed. Okay, in the EPIs, there's also an equivalency of a full year. However, for you though that are considering this pathway, be certain to consult with both the academic advisor at the college and the program coordinator in your school district. Just don't go do it off on your own. And of course, in the initial teacher preparation programs, what do we know about these? Internships, right. So you have internships that are built right into your plan of study. You're gaining experience through the internships. Okay, be careful though, because some of these other options out there, like the education minor or the professional training option, they may not have this component built in. So again, check with both the college advisor and with the district. Good point. Get your plan of study approved because it'll be signed off for by an advisor. Protects both the school and protects you. In all cases, the experience must take place in a state-supported and approved situation. The experience must be supervised by a trained professional designated by either the college or the school district. Note that experiences are competency driven. That is, these practices are woven into the experience. That's why a program is not complete until the candidate has completed the experience component, the internship. That's also a reason why some experience doesn't count, doesn't sync up with some programs. They simply can't be just added on. All right, here's why we like to share this site here too. This is another one called teach.org, or you can use the one we gave you before. Again, information leading to every school district program is found on these sites. That's where you find the person trained, approved, and designated by the state to assist you. Okay, are there questions about the experience component of certification? Yes, go right over here. I'll repeat it for the people listening in. Out-of-state experience. So do you have out-of-state experience? Okay, so you worked as a teacher years ago. Okay, well maybe you taught at different grade levels or at a college. In any case, who are you supposed to contact about out-of-state experience? Who would you say? The school district. Very good. They have a program coordinator there. That's where you go. Not to the college, not to me, no webinars. Right. Be sure that you have it in writing. Make a written plan. Okay, one last review of what we could call this, the 3 X's, I guess, is expertise. That's the knowledge, skills, and dispositions taught by the profession. Exams are based on competencies, right. And experience, we know that has specific guidelines, parameters that must be equivalent to 1 full academic year. All this information can be found, again, through pathways like this. Right straight to the Department of Education sites. And again, we put the spacing in there just so you can see it a little easier up here on the page. Again, do not provide personal information or pay a fee for any workshops or webinars for any of this information. This is all free. One tagline here at the test camp is to prepare, practice, and perform, because we believe that testing is performance. So here today you've already started to prepare by coming to this workshop. Your next test might be to come to some of the workshops. They're all free, they're all online. You might even come and train with us. That's up to you. They're all on demand, because we are the place that provides the test skills practice. Okay, we have online activities, online exercises, and we know that you're going to perform with confidence on your test, because everyone who completes the training passes on their first attempt so far. All right, so that's what you do. You master the program, you earn a certificate by earning 80% with us, and then you go off and pass your test. All right, so thanks again for contributing to the workshop discussions here today. We hope this was helpful for everyone. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, we hope to see you again here, again at the test camp.